Hey everybody, welcome back to the Consummate Athlete Podcast. I'm Molly Herford, and when I'm not outside attempting to adventure, I'm probably inside writing about it.
And I'm Peter Glassford. I'm a registered kinesiologist and an endurance coach.
So I have to admit, this week I've definitely actually been more adventuring inside on the trainer because we have a lot of snow here. So pretty excited to be going where the snow isn't for the next week or so.
Well, and also the listeners will be happy to hear you're taking a little bit of downtime from your running. It's maybe convenient with the amount of snow we have, but sometimes Mother Nature is guiding you towards the things you should do.
That sounds so holistic, Peter.
Well,
I'm so impressed.
I'm going to charge extra for that, I guess.
Yes, as my knee heals, my coach and I finally realized it was clearly not getting better with just like a day or two off of running and then coming back and starting up. So I'm now off of running for a little bit over a week. Probably won't be doing a ton of running where we're going, although we'll be doing plenty of hiking and other adventuring. So, Peter, I don't know if I told you about this, but the town we're going to be in has aerial silk classes.
I think you did mention that.
I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm just imagining.
The wrappings around the groinal area, I find it uncomfortable. But,
I'm just saying.
I mean, rock climbing's the same, though, really. They have that. It always happens.
Everyone should probably keep an eye on my Instagram because I'm imagining just like rom-com levels of Peter getting stuck in the aerial silks, like 20 feet in the air kind of situations.
Right.
But anyway, what have you been up to this week, Peter?
Still just trucking away on end of season and new clients starting up. It's been really cool. It's very thankful, as our last episode, very thankful for clients and everyone who's interested in just sort of, following the quote unquote smart athlete, philosophy.
Yeah.
Lifestyle. I was going to say lifestyle, but I'm like, that's not how I usually call it. Yeah, so I mean, I've just been working away on that. So lots of intake forms and, learning about what people have done and, trying to just make those small changes. We were talking about this morning, New Year's resolutions and stuff, trying to get people. So it's, it almost seems slow this time of year, right? So I feel like my monotonous and monotone voice, is being used a lot right now, just trying to keep people, we have time. Mm-hmm. The nice thing is that a lot of these folks are getting started ahead of the new year. Mm-hmm. We have, even for a fall race, right? We're 5-6 months. So just
although, you know what?
Start putting the deposits in the bank.
I was interviewing.
Hay is in the barn. We're trying to put the hay. Yeah.
I was interviewing someone yesterday for an episode that'll come out in a couple weeks, and she mentioned that as of right now, we're about 15 weeks out of Redlands, the big, cycling stage race for, pro racers. And I was just struck by that, because for some reason when you say 4 months out, I'm like, oh, that's tons of time. 15 weeks, though? I'm like, ah!
Yeah, there's definitely some variation there. I don't think I'm working with any elite road people at the moment, which is, I guess, sort of a relief because we got lots of time. I can keep telling myself that, because I think I also start panicking once it's like February, and I'm like, no, it's cool. Everyone will be okay. It's okay.
It's only 5 weeks.
You're all doing great. Could you just a little bit more?
And then Peter's hiding under his desk. Meanwhile, this is, I admit, my favorite time of year. I know a lot of people make fun of the cliche, 10 ways to stay healthy during the holidays or, 5 ways to keep your resolutions articles, but I love writing them.
I was going to say, you do a lot of them.
I'm going to come
I have
say,
about one in me. I mean, I'm maybe a fifth the writer you are, but I do a bit of writing, and I have to say,
I could write so many. I love them. I love them so much. They're so fun, and every year I get to try to figure out different angles and different ways to approach it and different people to talk to, and every year I love doing it. Partially because I really personally enjoy goal setting and all of that, and also because I'm terrible at staying healthy during the holidays. So writing about it kind of forces me to really think about choices I'm making.
I guess that makes sense. You write about maybe, or hopefully, what you have a passion about. I guess that's
so great. Tons of articles around that. If anyone is interested, if you pretty much Google my name and New Year's resolutions, there's probably a lot that's going to come up, to be honest.
Yeah, you did. Did you do one for Canadian Cycling Magazine?
Yeah, it's actually in the current issue of Canadian Cycling Magazine.
No, that's not also the women's one.
No,
that was the one before.
Yep.
Yeah, both were good issues. It's a couple good articles in them.
Thanks, dear. Anyway, today's guest.
I didn't say your article was good.
Well, thanks. Anyway, today's guest is my dear friend Jonathan Levitt. He's a runner from Boston who, like me, grew up hating running. However, unlike me, he also grew up playing some sports. He played some hockey. He played some baseball. But he always looked at running as just being this terrible thing. Then he moved to Western Mass, which I can definitely relate to, and kind of fell in love with running.
Are we doubling up back-to-back Western Mass?
Oh, we are.
Yeah,
wait for next week's guest, guys.
That's a hint.
Anyway, Jonathan is super rad. We talk all about how he got into running, how he shifted, and now he's really into ultra running. Jonathan also works for Inside Tracker, which is a company that basically does blood testing for people looking to improve their athletic life and their lifestyle in general.
And they sort of facilitate, I don't know, do they do the actual testing, or do they probably farm that out, but then they're sort of the ones who set it up and then also analyze the data.
Yes,
and
exactly.
That's where their strength is, I think.
Definitely.
I don't want to oversell or undersell, but...
Definitely. But if you're, for most people, the idea of, like, A, what to get tested, and then B, even just how to go about getting tested is actually really difficult. Up here in Canada, it's a pain. Down in the US, I know it's a pain. Unless you have a doctor that's going to test kind of everything across the board.
I think you're at the heart. Like, you can get blood taken, but in Canada you have to have a doctor. Even around I have a pretty good naturopath, and she's pretty open to whatever. But even there, what they're allowed to order is pretty limited, and then the doctor, you have to convince them that any of these things you want to get. So it's definitely tricky. In the States, you end up with pricing, and I don't even know how you would go about it in the States, but
exactly.
But then it is, what do you get, right?
Yeah. So we've both actually done some testing with Inside Tracker just a couple months ago to sort of see where we were at, and it was actually really enlightening, I have to say. I think both of us generally were already, feeling like, okay, we're pretty close to being optimal as far as our eating and our training goes. Let's sort of see what our blood work says. Because I don't necessarily think it's the first step in solving any problems by any stretch.
I don't think so. I think it's definitely a good rule of thumb would be every year you need to get even a baseline of, your red blood cells and all that basic sort of blood panel your doctor would run. That's now sort of includes vitamin D. But yeah, these panels that we ran were not super cheap. So prepare yourself for that. But I think both of us, there was stuff I thought I was doing okay. And then it was like my iron, my dad has hemochromatosis. And so he has high iron. So then I found that mine was actually creeping up high, which it had been sort of on the high end, and it was always like, oh, you're an endurance athlete. But then it was like, oh, this actually seems like now it's like out of the range.
Whereas mine...
Too high, which is abnormal, right? Like you never hear about that or rarely hear about that, even though it's actually quite common.
Whereas mine was the much more cliched tanked iron.
Yeah, for female runner, endurance athlete. So it just sort of... even irregardless of us eating a generally paleo diet or paleo plus candy from Molly,
hey.
There's small tweaks we can do there, right? So, all that to say, there was things that, we weren't alien with any sort of major illness, but we got these checked, and there's, some actual changes we can do because of it.
Yeah, so it's definitely been pretty interesting. And actually, Jonathan was nice enough to provide us with a code. So if anyone is interested in checking out Inside Tracker, we'll put all this in the show notes, but you can use the code ConsummateAthlete for 20% off of testing, if that makes it a little bit more...
And I think for the U.S., that's definitely good. It definitely worked in Canada. Somehow someone came to our house and took
fantastic.
It just one morning. We had to fast into the test, and they came at early too, 8 a.m. or maybe even earlier.
Yeah.
And it was done, and they were gone. And then a few days later, we had results on a website that you could see, and they were sort of presented where the troublesome ones were, and then it gave you a printout if you wanted to take it to your doctor. I took it to my naturopath.
Yeah. I should also point out, Inside Tracker is not sponsoring this in any way. This is actually
No, it's just sort of interesting, right? I think we're in a day and age where that stuff's going to be there, right? And you have to sort of go after stuff. And I will say, like, if you do have a naturopath, especially who's decent, but a doc who's good, my doctor is actually quite good too. A lot of these tests you can get as well through your doctor. So, and I think even with Inside Tracker, the thing I was really impressed with is I could actually upload all my historical blood tests, and they actually input all of those. So now you have like this history in your file. So that was, to me, the value greatly increased once you can see a historical timeline, right? So you could even take what you know already, maybe get one of their deluxe ones, or get a big thing panel done with your naturopath or whoever, and then just sort of bounce that off and use that how you will.
Yeah, and then I guess on the flip side, as someone who hasn't had a GP
and in the States, I don't know if there's a better, it's probably the way to go.
Yeah, like I haven't had a GP in years because of how our insurance works. I haven't had checkups in a really long time. I haven't had blood taken since I was probably 21. So for me, this was all very like a new thing, and seeing a lot of this stuff for the first time. So whether you're someone who does have access to a doctor and just kind of wants this extra thing, or if you're like me and finding a doctor is kind of a pain in the butt compared to this, it's been pretty cool. But yeah, Jonathan and I kind of get into a bit of the...
But that's not all we're talking about today. What else do you talk about?
Well, I was going to say, for someone who says he needs to stop interrupting, New Year's resolution, Peter. New Year's resolution.
Well, at least I say it about myself.
Anyway, Jonathan and I talk a ton about running, getting into ultra running, starting to add more mileage without injuring yourself. And, we do talk about the blood testing, but then also kind of get into some of the specifics and some of, honestly, what he's seen more frequently as he's gone through, thousands of athletes' blood samples at this point. So some of the common themes that he sees and, some of the suggestions that he would make pretty much across the board, having now seen a whole lot of examples.
And that's always, people ask about genetic testing, which is not necessarily what we're talking about. But the reality is a lot of these things are, best practices. What would you do, after the test, and why aren't you doing those things now, right?
Totally.
That's sort of always the, there's the rare snowflake things. You have low iron, sometimes that you just can't avoid that, even though we have a whole cow in our, there's things that, despite your best efforts, it's not working out. And sometimes we need that testing, right? But there are some practices that probably all of us know one thing we could probably do better, right?
Yeah. Oh, and I should actually mention, for those of you who maybe heard about Inside Tracker in the Sonia Looney podcast, yes, this is exactly the same thing that she did.
I was going to say, if this isn't an ad, then we're not getting paid enough.
Yeah, seriously, call us. It's kind of funny that just keeps sort of coming up, completely unrelated. Like, we'd had Sonia booked in way before we even heard about this.
Now, he doesn't run Under Armour, their run series, the one that got canceled with the fires and stuff.
No.
That guy's name is something similar, though.
Okay. Anyway.
Jonathan, you may have some sort of partner in crime in the running world.
Okay, anyway, let's get into this interview with Jonathan Levitt. Jonathan Levitt, how do you describe yourself if someone comes up to you and says, "What do you do?"
It's a good question. First, thanks for having me on the podcast.
Yeah, I'm excited about this. I feel like we've known each other for forever, which is not at all accurate, but it feels like it.
Yes, gotta love social media.
Exactly.
How would I describe myself, or what do I do? So I run a lot and talk to people about running a lot, and talk about running a lot. So I work for a company called Inside Tracker. We do personalized nutrition through blood analysis, and I'm currently training for my first ultra, which is a 50K coming up in about 4 weeks, hence the running a lot part.
That's awesome. Which ultra are you doing?
I'm doing North Face, California.
What made you choose that one?
So I've been running, I don't know, for 5-ish years now, and I've spent a lot of time, I spent some time trying to BQ and run sub 3, and I was just getting really obsessed with the pacing and time on the watch and all the stuff that is that, negative spiral. leading towards not enjoying running. So I wanted to switch to something completely new. I have no idea what my goal time is for the race. I was talking with someone earlier today, and my answer for the goal was basically, I want to cross the finish line with a shit-eating grin on my face, having had tons of fun for many hours. And so that's what I'm looking forward to. And I've been at this race for 3 years now, and it's just such a fun weekend. And it's the 50-mile trail championships, so it brings out a super competitive field at the pro and elite level. And then there's a very large November Project contingent that races as well, mostly the marathon relay, but some of the 50K and marathon and 50-mile distance as well.
That's awesome. And if your first ultra is anything like mine, you will definitely have that grin on your face. I don't know why you end up with it, but you will end up with it.
I can't wait.
Oh, man. So I keep hearing about the November Project. In random people I'm interviewing for totally different articles and stuff, it seems like it's just coming up more and more. Can you explain what exactly the November Project is, and how did you get involved with it?
Yeah, so it's really, at its core, it's about free fitness based on accountability. So it started here in Boston almost exactly 5 years ago. It'll be 5 years in 5 years in November. So it started in 2013, and it was two dudes from Northeastern that had graduated a couple of years ago, and they used to row, and they fell off the fitness wagon, you could say, and they wanted to stay accountable to themselves. So they created a Google Doc, called it a project, and planned to meet at Harvard Stadium to run stairs. And if you've ever seen Harvard Stadium, the seats are, 2.5 feet or 2 feet high. So we run up the seats and down the stairs, and it's a brutal workout. So they met every day for the month of November 2013, and other people ended up catching wind of this, loved the idea. They put out some tweets. This was in the early days of Twitter. Marathon Sports reshared something, and people started showing up. Fast forward to 2018, and there are groups in 49 different cities all around the world. I think 7 different countries, all people who love fitness or don't love fitness, but everybody does it for whatever their own reason is. But it's a super hard workout, and it's accessible for anyone. That's sort of the kicker.
That's super cool. Yeah, it's kind of crazy when stuff like that catches on, and I feel like that name makes it sound like it's some kind of really like deep philosophical, like crazy thing, or like, super charity oriented or something. But it was just like two dudes who just wanted to hang out and try working out together.
That's exactly it. It's grown through grassroots efforts. They don't sell gear. It's all you sort of know people based on what's called grassroots gear, which is spray painted November Project logo on a shirt. So it's pretty funny.
That's fantastic. Okay, so you have the November Project. You also have that Rest Day Brags Twitter and Instagram, which is some of my favorite stuff because it's both funny but also like a really good reminder. So how did you start that?
So I didn't start it. I sort of got, I don't want to say looped into it, but Amelia Boone is an elite obstacle course racer and a friend of mine. And she was having a conversation with her coach, who's now my coach, on Twitter, basically saying, why do the punishing long runs or summit shots get all the love? Why can't I, brag about a shower beer? Or, the only intervals I did today were laps to the fridge and stuff like that. And it took off. And we're not we don't have a product we're selling. We don't have it's not political. It's really accessible to literally everyone that exercises, and it's really addressing a problem that exists in the social media world, where it is that glorification of more is better, and we're trying to say that you can't do all of the hard stuff without the balance of the easy stuff. So I think where it came from was my coach David Roach tweeted, "Runners rarely think about the injuries avoided by resting before a small pain gets bad. When in doubt, don't run. Rest days save seasons." So Amelia responded basically saying that people don't brag about rest days like they do about their epic runs, but perhaps they should.
Mm-hmm.
And so rest day brags is an attempt to get people, or to help remove the stigma of rest.
Mm-hmm.
I took 2 unplanned rest days last week, and 2 years ago or a year ago, if I told myself I'd be heading into peak training week and I had just taken 2 rest days, I'd be freaking out. But I knew that was the right thing to do. I did a little rest day bragging, got a massage, bragged about that, versus choosing to run and run through pain in order to just stay consistent to a plan. So it's sort of a 2-part thing. Like, there are the planned rest days, which are hard, and then there are the unplanned rest days, which are a whole new bag of tricks
Mm-hmm.
that nobody likes, and people like or dislike planned rest days, but it's those unplanned rest days that either make or break a season.
Yeah,
or can
absolutely.
make or break a season.
Yes, for sure. Okay, so what is your best rest day brag that you've ever had?
So I posted one super early on, and it was something along the lines of like, my girlfriend makes sourdough, and so she had made these sourdough pancakes, and so I made some joke about sourdough pancake intervals. But just yesterday, I was browsing Instagram as we all tend to do,
Mm-hmm.
and I saw that my favorite recovery place here in Boston, where I see my chiropractor and a massage therapist, had an opening for massage. So yesterday, my rest day brag was jumped off the plane, Ubered directly to Wellness in Motion, and got a massage. Hashtag rest day brags.
Ooh,
So
that's good.
Was straight off the plane right into a massage, and took a rest day. So it was a good one yesterday.
That's a good one. Peter and I are about to be in a fight because this morning he texted and he's like, "Hey, like, I could get you in with our massage therapist Deb that we go see." She's like, she has an opening tomorrow at like 8:30 a.m. Like, I thought you'd want it, and I was like, that would have been really sweet if you had been paying attention and knew that I was leaving at 6:30 in the morning to go coach cross country for the day. So kind of so like like points for like trying to do something nice, but like minus points for clearly not paying attention to what I had to what I was talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
The other day. So I think it comes out with like a 0 balance, but I'm not really sure.
Yeah, almost
there. That's great. Okay, so in your getting used to rest days, because I really want to touch on this, because I think so many people listening can really benefit from hearing a little bit more about the benefit and like the positive aspects of rest days, and
Mm-hmm.
why they're good. So what are some of like the things you look for that say, oh, I need to take an extra rest day, or like, oh, I really needed this rest day? What are some of the warning signs for you that you would have ignored too?
Yeah, and I used to ignore them all the time, and now it's the complete opposite. It's those little niggles that you sort of want to catch before they turn into a problem. Like,
Mm-hmm.
The biggest thing with training a lot is it's that balance between getting as close as possible to too much without getting over that line.
Mm-hmm.
And the cool thing about the rest day is that it pushes you back a little bit from that threshold of having gone just too far. And the point of training is stress, rest, recovery. Stress, rest, adapt. So you inflict this stress on your body so that you can improve. But at a certain point, that stress becomes too much, and that's where injuries, burnout, all that fun stuff can happen. So if you're towing that line between, I don't want to say overtraining, but overreaching, and good quality training, and something comes up, that's often the case of where an extra rest day might play in. Now, my coach is notorious for having Mondays as the rest day for most of his athletes, and I think this is a two-part. There are a couple different reasons for this. For me personally, Monday is my most stressful day at work, so to not add the physical stress on top of that, the timing is best to sort of balance the mental stress versus physical stress. Functionally, his weekly training is a tough middle of the week with higher volume. I usually have a very easy Friday and then big weekend miles. So with the Monday rest day, the higher Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, easier Friday, big weekend, it makes sense to have that complete off day on that Monday. So, it starts you fresh for the week. I always find that I feel fine about taking a rest day on Monday, and every Tuesday I'm super excited to run. And so I think that's where it comes in for the a couple different reasons for the planned rest day. But then those unplanned ones are sort of hard to. You can't really plan for unplanned ones, but it's in the name. But it's really just. For someone with a coach, it's easy. I guess it's easier. You just provide the coach with the feedback on how you're feeling, physically, or I guess mentally.
See, that involves like being honest with your coach and like admitting a certain level of like what you might perceive as weakness. Although, as Peter and I keep telling people, it's not really a weakness to admit that you're really tired or you didn't sleep or you're feeling hurt.
And that's the thing. But all of these cues are your body trying to, provide you some sort of insight into what's going on. Like, if you're exhausted in the afternoon, that's telling you something. If you feel freaking amazing in the afternoon, that's telling you something. So I like to overshare on the coach-athlete side of things because I'd rather not make that decision myself. Mm-hmm. And I think it was David that joked that if you end up with an MRI without telling him, you owe him $200 or something like that. Like there are things that you should tell your coach before they become big problems, and bone issues would be one of them. So like stuff like that, like, you might think you're oversharing. You might think that it's perceived as being weak, but I think it's a strength to be able to explain how you're feeling on a both physical and mental level. There's so much to be said for waking up excited to train versus waking up not looking forward to training. And a lot of the work we do with Inside Tracker is giving people an objective reason to train less, or an objective reason to back off or add a rest day or think about a taper period, because many of these signs of overtraining are not just physical, it's mental as well. Like, if you wake up tired, or if you wake up, dreading your run, not because you're nervous about, crushing it, but rather like, okay, I really don't want to run today, that can be linked to, for men, lower testosterone. And there are plenty of things that can be done to address that, like readiness to train is what it's called, so that you don't get into that burnout or feel the negative impact of training a lot.
Yeah, it's funny how many people I think end up dropping out of sport entirely, or taking like, a 2-year break instead of just taking 2 rest days off. I feel like
yeah,
it's kind of comical.
For sure.
I also really like that you use the phrase like overreaching versus overtraining, because I think overtraining has just sort of this very, very like negative ramification around it, and just like a very intense ramification, right? Like it has to be like you've been training like 40-hour weeks and doing all like insane volume and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But like overreaching it just sounds a little bit less intense and loaded, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean it's very difficult to overtrain. Your body will tell you or injure you before you'll become injured before you can truly run yourself into the ground. Mm-hmm. And that's sort of that coping mechanism or protection that is built in, that something is going to, like, you're going to need to stop at some point before you get to that overtraining syndrome. Or you'll just push through it and get to overtraining. But it's the overreaching that when done properly and in short amounts of time, peak training, for example, that's where you can get some really big gains, as long as you facilitate good recovery and you're eating enough and all that good stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's back up also. I feel like you're a runner, but how did you get into all of this? Because I mean, you're not just a runner, like your life revolves around running and athletics. Were you an athletic kid? Did you do track in high school? What's your athletic background?
Yeah, so I was a pretty average team sport athlete. Never really great at baseball or hockey or soccer, but I loved baseball and hockey growing up and played both through high school and into college. Hated running. The only swimming I did was in camp, when I was desperate for excuses to get out of swim lessons. When I wasn't able to get out of swim lessons. And I studied sport management and marketing in college. I ran an intramural hockey league at UMass Amherst. So that was the extent of my, and I played in it. So that was the extent of my athleticism in college. After college, I started running. I was going to the gym a fair amount, and I graduated in 2012. 2013, I was watching the Boston Marathon. The events later that day transpired, but prior to the bombing, I was watching the marathon in Wellesley, looking at all these different people, shapes, sizes, abilities, and I said, if they can do it, I can do it. I want to run a marathon. So that's where the first seed was planted. Then the bombing happened, and being a lifelong Massachusetts and Boston resident, we felt it pretty hard here, or pretty significantly here. And so the next day I put on blue and yellow and the colors of the marathon that year, and ran my first half marathon. Not a great idea. I ran from basically the top of Heartbreak into Boston, to the finish line and back. It was coincidentally exactly 13.1 miles on the route that I went. I didn't follow the exact route because I didn't know it at the time. But yeah, I ran a half marathon that day. Next day I woke up basically with a stress fracture. Talk about overtraining. So then I didn't run for a few weeks, and I sort of slowly got back into it. I was working at another company at the time, and our main customer was were marathoners, and people would always ask how to use this product. It was a sports nutrition product in a marathon, and I was basically just guessing based on other customers' feedback. I said, may as well just sign up and run a marathon.
Sure.
So I did that. My first race registration was the Holyoke Marathon in 2014. I ran a successful half marathon in the build up to it, but that was my start into running and racing. So that was 4.5 years ago now. And it's been a fun couple of years, and it's brought me to some super awesome places and introduced me to some really amazing people.
That's awesome. Also, I didn't totally realize that you were in that Holyoke Amherst Western Mass bubble until just now. Or
Yes.
I forgot about it until now or something. But man,
Yep.
everything comes back to that.
Exactly. It's gorgeous out there this time of year.
I know. Oh, I miss it. But
Yep.
okay, so you moved from sports nutrition company to Inside Tracker. How did that happen?
That was really right place, right time. I was at an event that Inside Tracker was sponsoring called Executive Athletes. So it was geared towards athletes working in some, as executives or whatnot. Basically, business people who love to train and race. So, long story short, I was talking to the CEO about what I was doing for work at the time, which is basically building a brand ambassador program from nothing to about 500 ambassadors and about 100 professional elite athletes. And he point blank said, "Okay, why don't we hire you?" And I said, "Well, I love my job, but sure, I'm open to a conversation." And a couple weeks later, I had an offer, and I couldn't say no to this opportunity, which has been incredible. And I'm surrounded by people that have a really strong mission of helping all humans improve quality of life through a personalized approach to nutrition.
Yeah, and so I'll say, when I first started looking at it, and I'm going to have you explain exactly what it does in a second here, but when I first started looking at it, my initial reaction was like, I'm already like pretty healthy. Like, I kind of know most of what I need to do if I want to like improve, more vegetables, more sleep, all that stuff.
Yep.
However, like I wasn't doing them. Let's be honest. So, and actually, you know what? Peter and I did the tests and everything, and I have to say, like, I was actually pretty surprised by some of the results that I had. So, give us kind of like the elevator pitch. What exactly is Inside Tracker?
Yeah, so we make so many decisions on a daily basis around nutrition, and you go into a supermarket and you look at hundreds of and thousands of different options, and what we aim to do is provide guidance on how to make those decisions and what are the things that your body needs in order to achieve your goals. So we look at food frequency, we look at exercise and lifestyle, so we understand how you're going about your day and how you're training, and then based on a comprehensive blood test, we can look at the impact of that. And then from there, we say, eat more of this food X number of times per week, consider this supplement in this dose X number of times a week, with a meal, without a meal, etc. Look at modifying lifestyle in this way. So meditation, yoga, sleep, etc., whatever it might be. Whatever it's going to take to help you improve based on your goal of boosting energy, improving sleep, reducing injury risk, improve wellness, whatever it might be, our system will basically go through all of the available research that's relevant to you, and the output is basically the the 3 to 5 best things for you to do based on everything we know about you. So you'll have told us, like I said, all of this information, and from there it's a big if-then statement. So we have thousands of PubMed research studies loaded into an expert system that's essentially saying, if this gender, this age, this high level, this low level, and goal is this, then show that. So it's a way to distill all of the publicly available science into action. Mm-hmm. And there's so much junk on the internet with, hot diets for runners or worst foods for triathletes, and it's all clickbait, and it's all not personalized, and it's kind of dangerous to follow the recommendations of like best supplements for runners. We see 50% of our female population low on iron, but that also means that 50% of those people are not low.
Right.
And in fact, they might be high. And it's toxic to have too much iron. So, just blindly following, oh, I'm a female runner, I should take iron, is statistically possibly a good thing to do, but there's also a pretty large chance that is not the best thing for you to do, and in fact it's the worst thing for you to do. Mm-hmm. So our system aims to take away that guesswork and really drive personalized decision making around what you're putting into your body.
Yeah.
And then evaluate progress over time.
Yeah. So I think there's sort of like two types of people that I think it's sort of ideal for, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'd say the first type is the people who have already done sort of that like 95%, they're already eating mm-hmm. what they think of as like a pretty clean diet. They're already training, maybe they're even working with a coach and like they're training well and everything. And they just want to get that, eke every little bit of performance out by checking in. And then I think the other group of people are the people who, know that like, yeah, the vegetables would probably be a good idea and like the sleep is probably a positive, but just need that scientific validation that they're doing something unhealthy to themselves, and they actually do, have these markers that indicate they need to be doing this stuff. So is that about right?
And that's about right. And sometimes that is the same person.
Yeah.
They're an elite level athlete that still needs that cue. But yeah, we work with a ton of professional elite athletes, both individual and team sport. And it's pretty surprising sometimes that, some of their values look terrible. Mm-hmm. And so often we'll see a professional baseball player that looks malnourished from the inside. So Sure. It's an objective, your values are crap. You're highly at risk for injury. You're, under by 2,000 calories a day, which we've seen before. And you're at extreme risk for injury. And we've seen that person get injured. So, and then we've seen that person or a different person, or I'm generalizing here, but we've seen that type of person take the data, make some changes, and feel amazing. And it's going to work every time, because that's the system is firmly rooted in science, and we're not going to make a recommendation that we can't stand behind. So a lot of times people have heard that I need to do this, I need to do that, but it takes seeing it, staring you in the face to say, hey, this is your personal invitation to improve, before you might be willing to make that change. Like, oh, it's not me that needs to do that. My sleep is great, and I, train a lot, so I'm good. It's oftentimes those elite athletes or non-elite athletes that couple of things will have a massive impact. We're not telling you to go vegan. We're not telling you to cut out carbs. We're not telling you to, drop a food group, etc. It's really like eat oatmeal 5 times a week and take a vitamin D supplement, or
Mm-hmm.
eat fish twice a week and take a probiotic, and eat almonds once a day. So like super simple things like this that and sometimes we'll introduce people to completely new foods. Like I had never eaten shellfish before, but our dietitian suggested I give that a try based on some of my values, and now I love shellfish. So it's cool that sometimes it's really just avocados. I've heard great things about avocados. I'm going to try avocados, and become somebody's favorite food. Or it's oh yeah, I used to eat oatmeal all the time and I fell off the wagon with that. Here's a good reason to do it every day. So it's a lot of.
I'm just stuck on the fact that you live in Boston and you hadn't really eaten shellfish.
I know, it's terrible, right? I grew up on the Cape too, in the summer, and it's pretty embarrassing, actually.
It is. Like, oh my God, I can't get past this now.
Yeah. I know, it's yeah.
But
it's not one of my prouder moments.
Yeah, it is really funny to me how, I mean, honestly, like, elite endurance sport isn't really designed to make us the healthiest humans possible, like, by any stretch. And I think that's one of the other interesting things, though, is with Inside Tracker, you can choose what you're hoping to improve, right? If it's your actual overall health or if it's your endurance. And I mean, none of the endurance stuff is going to be bad for you, but it's going to be more focused on how do we improve the markers for endurance training, not necessarily for your like general health. So I think that's
exactly. So
super cool.
We've been doing a lot of work with GU Energy and their group of professional athletes, and one of the things that we looked at were what are the biggest problem areas within that group of elite athletes, and how does it compare to the general population. So we have the ability to do research within our own database based on dozens of different variables. So like we can look at runners that run more than 8 hours a week, and we can call them something different than runners that run 3 hours a week or 15 hours a week or whatnot. So we looked at the GU athletes compared to what we called more of the average or amateur athlete. So somebody who's not training, 8, 9, 10, 14, 15 hours a week. And pretty much the same problem areas. So it just goes to show that no matter what level you're at, there's always room for improvement. And it's just the order of magnitude or the potential impact that it can have at those higher levels or not at the higher levels. But when you are running that much, really the biggest thing we've seen is that people just aren't eating enough. Mm-hmm. And just by adding another couple hundred calories, I want to give the disclaimer, I'm not a dietitian. We have plenty of dietitians on staff, but I just thought it was important to say that. Just by adding another couple hundred calories, this is something I've done personally. It's made a tremendous impact on energy levels, on recovery, and I'm still almost at a deficit, despite thinking I'm eating literally all the time. Mm-hmm. And if you're running 40, 50, 60, 70 plus miles a week, that's a lot. You're losing for a guy, that's like 1,000 calories a day that you're burning. And the majority of runners aren't replacing that appropriately. So what we see is elevated cortisol, which is your stress hormone, lower testosterone, which is relevant to power and readiness to train and sleep and recovery ability, sexual health, all that good stuff. And it's just this sort of vicious cycle that if you're not refueling and not getting it back in, it's harder to get more out of your own performance. And so that's one of the biggest takeaways we've seen across the board for particularly endurance athletes and particularly runners.
Mm-hmm. And I find it super funny. I see the same thing all the time, and it's so funny to me. It's always people who are trying to like lose that last 5 pounds or whatever, and often by adding calories back in, that's actually when they tend to get to whatever the race weight or goal weight is.
Yes, it's fascinating. So I took a look through my results with our dietitian in January, and I ended up adding an extra 500 calories, and I lost a couple pounds in the next few months, despite eating, almost about 3,000 more calories on a weekly basis. So it's counterintuitive, and one of the factors is that the caloric restriction can elevate cortisol, and elevated cortisol can inhibit weight loss. So it's that vicious cycle of, intuitively you think of calories in, calories out. It's not always the case, and it's not that formulaic, especially when you involve the hormones that are responsible for regulating these types of things.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's funny because, the common diet advice is always, subtract 500 calories a day from your diet and you'll be at like a 1 pound deficit, you'll lose a pound a week or whatever. But, when you're an athlete, the other thing I've noticed is like, there's so many books now on, diets for like relatively healthy people. They're not necessarily bad diets, but I start reading them and all of a sudden I realize like, oh, this is not written for someone who's trying to train for any actual like sporting event. This is meant for someone who goes to the gym 3 days a week for 45 minutes.
Totally. So one of the funniest things I've ever seen on my, my coach, David, has what he calls the adventure log for all of his athletes. And it's a spreadsheet on Google. And the best comment I had seen on there after my first 3.5 hour run was eat lots of fun food today. Yes. And it's just like, it's so simple. Like, just, I guess it's not that simple because it's an area that is really easy for some people and it's really hard for others. So I'm not downplaying that, but it's really, it doesn't need to be that hard. It's food is fuel, but food is also fun and social and all that good stuff, and functional. And his take on it, and he's not a dietitian either, but his take on it is, have your cake and eat it too. Do the right stuff, eat the right things, but also, enjoy yourself and have the cake and pizza and ice cream. And if you look at Rest Day Brags, particularly in summer, most of the photos we post are either somebody holding a beer or somebody holding an ice cream cone. Yes. And we're trying to remove that stigma of, I can't be a serious runner if I'm eating ice cream. Mm-hmm. That's ridiculous. Yes, you can. And it's trying to remove, getting back to Rest Day Brags, trying to remove the stigma around, pizza and ice cream and cake and all this, because all these perfect plates of food that you see on the internet, that's not what people eat 24/7. They're, everybody's human. And what we're trying to do here at Insight Tracker is to say, you can stay with your current routine, just make these additions or make these tweaks. And then with Rest Day Brags, the goal is really to show that other people are doing this too, and you're not the odd one out because you had ice cream or you had pizza or you had cake or whatever it might be. And I mean, even like I've fallen into that trap at times too, and I spent a lot of time being super strict about my own diet. And I was listening to a podcast recently, and it was a dietitian talking with a coach, and she was basically saying the guidance she gives is that that it's better to be good most of the time than perfect sometimes. Mm-hmm. And it's so simple when you put it that way, that you don't have to be perfect, just be good. And I think there's a lot that you can learn from that around not just nutrition. Brad Stolberg wrote a great piece, I think it was for Outside Magazine, all about good is okay. because if you can consistently be good, you'll improve. You don't have to be perfect.
Yeah, for sure. I really like that. Side note on the cortisol. So obviously, if anyone that listens to the podcast is like shocked by this, I'll be surprised. But my cortisol is a little high.
Go figure.
Yeah, I know. Really surprising statistic there. So I've been using a meditation app as per Inside Tracker's recommendation. Except I almost threw my phone across the room today because my phone updated the app. And it turned off the chime sound that would let me know when 10 minutes was up. So there I was sitting, trying to be super nice and zen, and all I could think is like, God, this 10 minutes is taking forever.
4 hours later.
But like, don't want to look at my phone because that means that I'm like not doing it right? Like, I'm like, oh
so
God.
How long did you go?
I'm going to look at it. It's going to be like 2.5 minutes. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. 25 minutes, which like,
nice.
I know is not a bad thing, but when you have, a full day of things that you want to get done, and, you're expecting the chime to go off at 10 minutes. I was like, oh my God, this is the least zen that I've ever come out of a meditation.
Yeah.
Just so mad.
So it's funny, the meditation piece is really interesting. We've started to incorporate it here at our office after our Monday meetings. One of our team members sort of takes us through like a 5 or 10 minute meditation or stretching or something like that. And it just feels so good to take that break in the day. And I mean, if you think about it, really the only way to get that time on a consistent basis to yourself is to take up smoking. So like, why do smokers get all the free time, 5 minutes every hour? But us runners and cyclists, and triathletes, we have to work all the time. No, it should be the other way around. It should be, you should take time for yourself because it allows you to be better in all aspects of your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm going to keep doing it. I will report back to everyone how meditation goes. I've tried it before like a billion times, and I've never been super successful. But actually, again, as per the like why this is cool, I don't really listen when it's something that I read that's like good for everyone, but when I can see my own statistics and be like, oh no, this is actually like scientifically going to be good for me specifically, that does make it an easier thing to convince myself I need to make time for. So
that makes sense.
Yeah, it's very cool. All right, are there any other, so the whole, you're probably not eating enough, or possibly, we're not going to say that's across the board, but what are some of the other like common ones that you see for endurance athlete types?
Vitamin D is another big one, and
which
it's
is
so easy.
Funny.
Yeah, we do a lot of work in baseball, and so obviously baseball players are outside all the time, and same thing with trail runners that are spending hours on their feet in outside all the time. And particularly for those two populations, we really see a lot of people that have low vitamin D levels, and not just like normal low, but like a doctor would actually say, hey, you should take a supplement because they're clinically low. So what we see with that is their sleep is impacted, their recovery is impacted, mood, mental health, all that good stuff can be negatively impacted, and it's literally 10 cents a day to fix through supplementation. And unfortunately, a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm outside all the time. I can't be low," but below a certain threshold, it's really tough to get it through sunlight or diet. The sunlight is fine for maintaining, but that's one of the common things that we see. Cortisol is another one. Lower testosterone for guys that are training a lot. Women, we see low iron, low DHEAS, which is a female sex hormone, also related to energy and reproduction and mood and like I said, recovery. Those are the common ones. And then outside of that, it's really all over the board.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it definitely was surprising for both Peter and I. Like, we both got very different results and stuff that I
Hmm.
never would have expected for me. Like, even just having, I have no issue disclosing this on the podcast. My iron is a little low, which is very
Yep.
strange for someone who eats a fair amount of red meat now. So,
Right.
very interesting stuff that I would not necessarily have, ever found on my own because I
Hmm.
was like, no, I'm eating meat. This might have been a problem back when I wasn't, but it shouldn't be now. Why is this a thing? And I never would
Yeah,
have
and that's the
guessed.
thing. We have a lot of people that say that, and it's really an absorption thing, and it's definitely one of the most common reasons for someone to consider blood testing, to look at their iron levels. There's so many factors that go into having optimal iron, and it's all about nutrient timing and absorption and when you take it or when you eat it or what you eat it with. And there's so much that is not communicated to runners about all these important things that have such an impact on energy and recovery and endurance, that we're just hoping to stir the pot on the conversations that need to happen like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with iron, I was so surprised at how many things can block iron absorption that are things that I would be normally having probably around when I'd be having red meat, or when I
Exactly.
would normally, if I hadn't thought about this, when I would take an iron supplement, I would probably be drinking a cup of coffee because I would be doing it at
Yep.
breakfast. Womp
Yeah.
womp.
And it's just one of those things that's just not communicated. I was
Mm-hmm.
talking to an athlete, who knew that she needed to take iron on an empty stomach, and she does a lot of fasted training. So she would take her iron supplement right after or right before a run. Well, one of the best ways to decrease iron absorption is to add inflammation or some sort of exercise stimulus. So she thought she was doing this great thing because, she was right in that you should take iron on an empty stomach, but it's this other variable that was unknown that, was keeping the iron from being absorbed.
Ugh. Ugh, it's a minefield.
Exactly.
All right, so you guys just recently published a paper. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so the official title is a longitudinal analysis of biomarker data from a personalized nutrition platform in healthy subjects. Okay, so what does that mean? We looked at our database of tens of thousands of users over the last about 10 years and basically summarized it to say, does an automated or does a personalized nutrition platform improve healthy people? And we found that it does. And so we looked at this group. The sample size is just over 1,000 people. For comparison purposes, a good research study is 10 to 30 people. So we had almost 30 times that in some capacity. So there's a lot that can be gained from this paper. We started looking at some of the associations between some of the biomarkers. We looked at what are some of the things that can be that we can understand as what are the best things that people are choosing. So I can say that adding oatmeal every day is probably the best thing that most people can do. And then this comes from the research that we have done within our own population. And then there's a lot around there's not a lot of information or research on healthy people. There's a lot of research on sick people, and so we're excited to have a pretty large database of healthy people and can understand what does a healthy person look like that trains X number of hours a week, at scale. So it's a whole lot of these N of 1 experiments or N of 1 experiments, but just at a large level. So it's understanding how do we take what each individual person is learning and apply it to, a healthy population. So an example of this is we used some machine learning to look at correlations between biomarkers. So we test 41 different or 42 different metrics, and many of these have not been studied in parallel or looking at them together. So we can see, okay, if your vitamin D improves, what are some of the other areas that may possibly improve? So if those areas are not improving due to the based on what we know about how to improve something else, perhaps we should look at what's related to that metric. So the summary is it's not just a one and done. The results show long-term improvement in a little more than a dozen of the biomarkers that are most commonly out of range for healthy people. And it really validates that the algorithm is effective in selecting personalized nutrition interventions for a specific person, given who they are and what they're doing. And it's really the first study of its kind to highlight this. There's a lot of companies that are saying that they have a solution to personalized nutrition, or their diet is the best or whatnot. But we use the data to show that this works.
That's awesome. And I think that's actually something I've been talking to a lot of people about lately. I was doing an article on intermittent fasting for athletes and just sort of the ins and outs of that for Outside a few weeks ago, and I spoke to Rob Wolf about it. And he was really bemoaning the fact that, all of this stuff that's out right now that's like, oh, intermittent fasting is great for XYZ is based on a ton of different, small papers that have been published that are done on clinical populations. So,
right.
Morbidly obese populations where it's like 10 people in the study that are 200 plus pounds overweight are seeing these results. Like that does not translate to a healthy athlete necessarily. So I think it's really cool to finally have, something that actually takes a look at all of this information around healthy populations.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It was funny. Our team was we basically had an internal education session around the paper and the creation of it and what it means. And for those of us that aren't on the science side, 1,000 people sounds great, but we didn't really understand the magnitude of, we're looking at studies of 30 people and getting excited about, 30 healthy people or 15 healthy people. And here's a study on 1,033 healthy people that we can further break down into, very specific demographics to look at, women age 24 to 36 that train like this and have a statistically significant population to research from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's super cool. All right. I think we should wrap it up there, but people obviously need to follow you on a billion different platforms and should definitely check out Inside Tracker. So I'm going to have you pimp yourself out here. Tell everyone where they can find you, where they can find Rest Day Brags, where they can find Inside Tracker. Go.
Awesome. So I like to keep everything mostly simple. So I'm JW Levitt on Twitter and Instagram. And then Inside Tracker is Inside Tracker on all platforms, and Rest Day Brags is Rest Day Brags on all platforms.
That is reasonably easy to find. Perfect. We'll have all of those links in the show notes. All right. Cool. Is there anything else we missed touching on that you want to put out there to the audience?
No, I think that covers it. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks so much for tuning into the Consummate Athlete podcast. You can check out my stuff over at theoutdooredit.com or by following me on Instagram and Twitter at Molly J. Herford. And you can check out Peter's coaching, training plans, blogs, all that fun stuff over at smartathlete.ca or by following him on Twitter and Instagram at Peter Glassford. And if you want to support this show and other awesome podcasts, please check out wideanglepodium.com for show info, other podcasts, bonus content, and to become a donating member so you can get all of that rad behind the scenes content and help keep shows like this on the air. And lastly, if you're enjoying this podcast and all the information that we're bringing to you every single week, do us a solid and pop into iTunes to leave us a rating and review. It takes you about 2 seconds. You can do it on your computer, you can do it on your phone, and it really helps us out. Thanks so much, and we will see you next week.